The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and this is the Steuben County Office for the Aging section of our program. Steuben County Office for the Aging, committed to maximizing quality of life, safety, and independence. It's good to have you back in the studio, Mike.
Hey, great to be back, Frank.
You've got a lot going on. So you're a candidate, as the screen says, candidate for Legislator, District 9, and then Thurston Town Supervisor. Before we get into why you ran and all the who, what, when, where, and why questions, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background.
Okay, thanks, Frank. So I'm a lifelong resident of Steuben County, born and raised in Thurston, 2005 graduate of Campbell Savona, 2009 graduate of Canisteo with a degree in political science. I then kind of switched gears, spent 6 years owning and operating the Town Talk Bakery in Canisteo. And since 2018, I've been back living in Thurston, involved in town government since that point, first as town historian, joining the town board in 2020, and then Thurston Town Supervisor since March of 2023.
Wow. How's that went? It was a big learning curve?
It's been a huge learning curve. I must say, though, the past 2 years have been two of the most rewarding years of my life, professionally.
Sure.
It's been a wonderful endeavor.
Well, and you did a good job of getting media attention and attention in general to the voters on sludge, right?
Right.
And so you really took something head on that was a pretty major deal.
It was a major deal. We were able to push back on the state, who wanted to allow municipal sewage sludge, toxic sewage sludge, to come to Thurston from Long Island. We feel we've really been leaders, countywide. Cameron, Rathbone are looking at this yesterday, or on Monday. I know the county passed a memorandum,
I think so,
in support of, there's a 5-year moratorium being proposed by the Assembly and the State Senate to put a moratorium on it statewide. So we in Thurston feel like we've really been leaders, statewide on this issue.
So why did you town supervisor, and there is a primary there too, why did you decide to also run for Steuben County Legislator?
I think my time as town supervisor has prepared me well to serve also as a county legislator. I thought about doing it 4 years ago, running for county legislator, but I felt a little unsure, and through the training I've done through the Association of Towns, through the Office of State Comptroller, I feel like the roles would go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. And if I'm going to continue being town supervisor, makes sense to serve as county legislator.
Do you feel like your time as supervisor will help you in that role if you're lucky enough to win?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely think it will.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So what would you say, the question I'm going to ask is, what is your goals if you're a legislator? Or we could also put it as a kind of, what is your party platform? What is your platform for running for legislator?
I think so let me say, first, when I became town supervisor, I felt like there were issues such as the sewage sludge issue that had been going on for 40 years had not been addressed, like the concerns of the residents weren't being addressed. And I really feel, these past 2 years as town supervisor, I've listened to the concerns of residents and acted on them. I want to do the same thing at the county level. I feel, I attend, Thurston meetings, of course, I'm there every month.
Of course.
I attend several Cameron meetings. The Cameron Town Supervisor, he's been very supportive, kind of like a mentor, Bob Manley. We have no legislator, at our meetings. And the same, I know, goes for Canisteo. And if a legislator isn't present at the town meetings, how do you connect with the residents? How do you understand their concerns, and how do you advocate them for them at the county level? So I really want to be accessible and accountable and hear what people have to say.
What do you see as being issues that you will have to deal with if you win legislator?
So a couple things. Big thing I've heard as I've been doing the petition process is I don't have any high-speed internet, or I don't have access to cell service. And I know that's an issue, certainly for District 9. I know in Thurston we still have 30% of our residents that don't have access to cell service or high-speed internet. So that's really becomes an emergency if you have an emergency, that's a kind of life or death situation. So really pushing for that. I know there is funding coming every year from the state. I know Steuben County has funding for this. We just need to push that forward. And then, of course, the other big thing, certainly for Cameron and Canisteo, we were fortunate in Thurston, haven't seen the flooding, but Cameron, Canisteo, I know, being devastated by the flooding and really advocating on their behalf, working with, counterparts at the state and federal level to get them, the help they need.
Well, you beat me to the punch on that one. So the next question I was going to ask was the two, I would argue, when I went out and got petition signed for other candidates, that the two biggest stories I would hear about or conversations I would have, one was on flooding, which you just covered.
Right.
The other one is on the county and the dealing with the Sheriff Jim Allard, and the indemnification, which I hate that word. It's so complicated. But where do you stand with the sheriff and that with the county?
I'm certainly, in support of the sheriff. I'm not in support of continuing the appeal, this ongoing legal battle between the county legislature and the sheriff. And
you actually, and I would like to ask why you felt this so necessary, but I thought it was great. We read it on the air. Your support for the county sheriff, and that was by the statement from you and the board.
Right. We as a town board decided at our April board meeting to pass a resolution in support of Sheriff James Allard after we found that our local representative voted to continue this appeal. And I know throughout the petitioning process, it's clear he has support. He's a duly elected individual, first elected in 2016, 2020, and then he was reelected with 78% of the vote in 2024. So I would challenge any of the legislators that voted to appeal this decision to run countywide and get it 78% of the vote. So that's one thing. And then I think the second thing is really the financial cost of the county. I know the county really works to keep the tax cap, stay below the 2% tax cap. I've done the same thing as town supervisor in Thurston. But when you do that, you have to be real meticulous about how we're spending money. And spending $200,000 since November 2023 on a legal challenge we knew probably was going to fail from the get-go, and then appealing it now, we're going to spend more tax dollars, and we know the appeal is going to fail. So, yeah.
Now, you had mentioned some of the issues that people talked to you about. I did too when you were on petitions. How did the petition process go for you?
I really enjoy the petition process. I've talked to close to 260 people throughout, between Thurston, Cameron, Canisteo. It gives you a chance to connect one-on-one with individuals and hear their concerns. And people overall very, very gracious. Few people don't answer the door, but overall.
That's the
good.
System, right? Well, it's so cold. No one wants to open the door normally when it's out. How many figures? How many signatures did you need to get?
So ballpark, I needed roughly 200. So about 265 got a little over. So yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
What did you say? And you kind of highlighted it a little bit earlier. What did you find to be the biggest issues, besides maybe flooding, that people are dealing with? And the internet.
So kind of interesting. I think, certainly I carried the two petitions, one for town supervisor, the other for county legislator. When I visited with people, in Cameron, Canisteo, the big thing was, and even Thurston, they're like, oh, we have a county legislator. What do they do?
Yeah.
So it's that. So that was like the first thing that came out of probably 80% of people's.
Wow.
So that breakdown of communication. You really need to work, and I want to really be an active county legislator. In Thurston, I really don't need introductions anymore when I go to someone's door.
Sure.
People know who I am. I want the same for, hopefully I can run again in 4 years if I get elected. I want the same in Cameron and Canisteo in 4 years that everyone knows who I am.
What has the feedback been about you deciding to run for legislator?
People, have been very supportive. They think it, makes sense to run for both roles. I know there's a lot of county legislators that also serve as town supervisors.
Sure.
Years ago, Steuben County was run by the Board of Supervisors. So,
Right. Do you find it challenging to take on both campaigns?
It is challenging, but I think as my time as town supervisor has shown, I'm always up for a good challenge. So, you know.
Well, you mentioned that. What would you say is your biggest accomplishment when you look back at it as town supervisor?
I think certainly, you know, the sewage sludge,
Yeah.
certainly, but I've worked really hard to kind of restore, I feel, you know, communication with residents, with the various department heads. You know, we have created a townwide newsletter. We are very active with our Facebook, with our website. We've opened our meetings up to Zoom. Started working closely with, you know, the fire department, the highway department. These are things that never happened before. And then I feel we as a board communicate very well, which is something that I know prior didn't happen. And yeah, so I'm also very proud we have worked to secure a lot of grant funding. We have a housing rehabilitation. Okay. We were awarded $400,000 last year for that. So that's going to be getting underway in the next month or two. So,
and we go back to the campaign, and you are running for Thurston Town Supervisor, but also candidate for Legislator, Steuben County Legislator. Mm-hmm. These are primaries that we're talking about right now. With that short time frame, because I do think it's interesting, June 24th is the vote, right?
Right.
But then if you win that primary, you have all the way till November to campaign. Right. You've got all that time in the world, it seems like. So with this short time frame, how do you intend to run your campaign?
Really, I have some, you know, great volunteers helping me out. I have like my personal goal, like every day, I got to talk to 3 to 4 people. I just have that, you know, in my, as this back of my mind. So it's just really just talking to people and, you know, going door to door.
Well, I also noticed that you're because it's not all, you can't get to every door. Right. I mean, that's the nature of the campaign, of any campaign. But you have, and I've seen other people decide to do this as well. I think it's a good idea, a kind of a meet the candidate event. Right.
So we have scheduled 2 meet the candidate events. The first one will be held on Saturday, May 31st from 11 to 2. That will be at the Cameron Mills Market, County Route 119 in Cameron Mills, New York. You know, thanks to our volunteers, there will be free food and drinks. So, you know, come down, you know, have something to eat, and let's chat.
Yeah.
And then the second event will be Friday, June 6th, and then Saturday, June 7th. That will be at Canisteo. Crazy Days set up there. So yeah, we'll hang around there. You know, I'll be there during the day. Happy to talk.
Great. And just before we go, how can people help out your campaign and perhaps find out more about you?
Right. So, you know, we're posting on Facebook, but also send me an email, volino@gmail.com, and I will certainly get back to you, and we can, you know, like to talk, whatever. So,
all right.
yeah.
Before we go, this is the big question. What would you say to voters before they head into the booth on January? Listen to me, on June 24th for the primaries.
Well, I would say first, you know, early voting starts June 14th, so get out and vote, and then primary day is June 24th. And then I just want people to remember, you know, I'm working for you. I believe a public servant. I'm here to serve the public. I don't have any private, you know, interests beside other than, you know, working on your behalf.
Sure.
So.
Well, thanks so much for doing this, and I know we'll talk again before the primary. At least I hope we can. All right.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Frank.
Best of luck with your Meet the Candidates.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us.